Welcome to the graduation of the 16th graduating class of Lesley's MFA program in creative writing, the class of January 2015. A special welcome to A.J. Verdelle, our faculty graduation speaker. Sage Kalmus, our graduating student speaker. And thank you to Janet Pokaroba and Tyler Birdwood, Jana Vanderveer, and Craig Garland for all that they do for this program. And to the faculty who are this program. As are the students, of course. Sometimes it seems that writers care more, and perhaps too much, about the size of their readership and less and perhaps too little about the quality of their readership. Now, this is understandable because professional writers do, more or less, write for a living after all. They don't usually make a living from their writing, or enough of a living, but the more readers they have, the more likely they are to gain some compensation for what they write, and the more financially secure they are, the more time and presence of mind they have to keep writing. But it must also be true at perhaps a deeper level that writers care about the quality of their readership, or maybe they care about the quality of their work's effect on their readership. They want their readers to be affected in some way that involves pleasure and illumination. How writers care can vary greatly. From Whitman's outsized ambition, he thought leaves of grass read widely enough could avert the Civil War, to Philip Larkin's more modest claim. He said he wasn't finding many poems he wanted to read, so he decided he had to write those poems himself. Put most simply, a writer writes to be paid attention to. Now that may sound a bit narcissistic, but I think writers fool themselves if they don't admit that a certain amount of ego involvement goes into the very impulse to write. But real writers want what they've made, not who they are, paid attention to. A few years ago, a friend of mine told me he saw one of my poems on a bulletin board. He'd attended an international conference on trauma where participants were invited to post, not online but on cork, any text that they found important to them as they wrestled with the effects of trauma in their lives. Someone had posted a poem of mine. Sometimes I feel it's enough to think of that person who posted my poem, whoever he or she was, as my readership. If nothing else, a single stranger was affected enough to want to pay forward something I'd made. And his or her act of sharing, in some ways an act of gratitude, makes me grateful in turn. It's one of the few poems I've written that seems to work kind of for ceremonial occasions, so I will offer it here. It's called The Work. The work. You can go now, out of your life's compromise with life. You're ready to walk beneath the sycamores lined along the street, like crowds welcoming their own liberation. Yours will be a simple victory. One day you'll choose to look out instead of down. So leave and keep leaving. Release what holds you back. Throw it aside as someone who's not thirsty anymore flings a fan of water from a paper cup, the water for a second taking flight, riveted with sunlight, air, and sound. For you, no wings, just the habitual grip of hands. But notice how the dead skin begins to molt and fall away, so even they grasp new things as new. This victory will hurt and even kill you sometimes. A few welts won't heal. Remember, as a child, how you stacked your wooden blocks and in a fit of serious pleasure kicked them down. It's bruising work you once mistook for play. Okay, so we award the graduate certificates before our faculty and student speakers address the graduates, so they can then in turn talk to them as alumni. So now comes the shake, take, and smile portion of this. And AJ, if you would help me. You wouldn't mind holding me? You're the hold, and then they take, and then we shake. Okay? First, now my lavalier is supposed to be working now, is Matthew Brennan. Oh, and I get a toy. Oh boy, a toy. Sarah Clark. Joanna Cook. From Maine? From Lee. Oh. I'm starting to list. Brianne Costa. We're getting this down. Emily Gordon. Yes. Thank you. Oh, this is Lee Hershey, who is in Japan on a fellowship right now. So, congratulations to Lee. Hope Johnson. Thank you. Congratulations. Helen Lavin Jordan. Thank you. Congratulations. Sage Kalmus. Thank you. Maida Lynn Corta. Steven Krauska. Cynthia K. Andy Landis. Congratulations. You may have heard my heart beating through the lavalier that time. Bonita Lee Penn. Congratulations. Melissa Ratliff. Deborah Sosin. And Juliana Studer. Okay. I now have the pleasure of introducing A.J. Verdelle. A.J. Verdelle's debut novel, The Good Negress, won 5 national prizes, including from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Bunting Institute at Harvard University, the American Library Association, and finalist prizes at the Los Angeles Times, the Impact Dublin Award, and the Penn Faulkner Foundation. Her essays on subjects ranging from slavery to art to motherhood have been published widely. A devoted teacher of writing who is uniquely suited for this program because it requires bursts of energy and intense moments of hovering over her students' work. She has taught at Princeton University, in the University of Vermont MFA program, the University of Iowa Summer Writing Program, and the Fine Arts Work Center Summer Writing Program. She currently teaches at Morgan State University in Baltimore, in addition to having taught here with us at Lesley since 2003. Her new novel is forthcoming from Random House, Spiegel, and Grau. A.J. Verdelle considers herself a mother first and a writer second, and is often asked to write and talk about cultural icons in the African American community, which she does happily and with intensity. A.J. Verdelle.
So, here you are. Here we all are. You're done. Here now, you are closing a chapter in the story of your lives. There is power in this pause. You are done with all that we require of you. And we are done with our nudging and our hovering and our monthly education and our practical insistencies. This is the last time we gather with you in this formation, us facing you. Today, we look at you assembled and we applaud you and we are proud of you. This is the moment where we cut you loose. In my vision, you take off away from us like you are a flock of birds. I see a crowd of you in V formation at varying levels of ascent. You all share the same intention. You're moving in the same direction, up. I watch you all on the wing, concentrating, maintaining your positions, adjusting your altitude, making minute yet exact adjustment in the angle of your feathers, so that in conjunction with the wind, you launch yourselves individually and together aloft. I am enlivened and remotely impressed by this image of you. I don't know which one of you is at the front, because already you are distant. And besides, each one of you has your own place in formation. You know each other. You know what you're doing. You are today a flock together. I trust that you will chatter or sing as you fly, a way of letting your compatriots in flight know exactly where you are. Some of you, adjacent, depend on the bird to your left or to your right. Their wings must disturb the wind in front of you or redirect the breeze behind you. I marvel at this shape you make, this natural technology of navigation. You are flying in the prototype of aviation, in the prototype of the machines we know as planes. You flock you. In your precise formation, you show off natural tendencies to assemble in an efficient order, to hang back, allowing each other space, to spread out so there's no jostling, to accurately read and manage the wind with the work of your own wings. I celebrate your launch, your takeoff. I am proud of the beautiful V, the vision you are. Can you see you as I see you? Your final reunion, this event we call residency, has brought some biting chills. Even in this frigid weather, there are birds out there, some of them in naked trees, some of them even farther up. You can hear them in the mornings if you listen. This morning, I briefly held my breath to silence the close, loud sound of my own breathing. I could hear birds chatting, even cold as it is. Once I heard the birds, then I could resume my breathing, which is so close to me and so loud in my skull. The rhythm of my breath can make me deaf to lighter sounds. But once I hear the birds, then there they remain. I can continue to hear them beyond, around, above, and within my own proximal or internal din. Getting to this silence, even occasionally, is important. The sounds we strive to perceive are those that feed our spirits. We have to consciously listen for them. So much almost mechanical noise happens within this one vessel we call me. We all call ourselves me, and we are all noisy to ourselves. We live inside a sometimes roiling cauldron of self-possession. Getting outside of that one vessel with its harmony or polyphony or cacophony balances the important work of being inside ourselves. Going or listening or reaching outside permits us to hear birdsong and wind song and the sweet sounds of others who share this life with us. We need this surround sound to write well. Or maybe we need all this surround sound to write well. Or maybe we need all this surround sound to write. I bid you all sing. When we talk about having theme songs, we're talking about singing, and we're not taking the step to sing. In my culture, there's a spiritual that you learn when you're really young. Over my head, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music. Oh, music in the air, I hear music. Oh, music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Singing creates a vibration in your body, reverberating against the specific you are. Much like the vibration of the tiny bones and tendons, like the rhythm, the gift, the mystery of feathers. Sing, garden, run. Do whatever you need to do outside your writing to keep you in tune with your own vibration, to bring you closer to yourself. Knowing who you are and what makes you you will be immeasurable and indispensable toward making your work unique, particular, precise, your own. You've learned that here. But you must get as close as you can to yourself. And you must do this routinely and efficiently because you must also get outside yourself in order to be effective and productive. Getting outside yourself is much harder work. For me to sing to you is difficult. It takes a specific brand of courage. But singing is an expression of a ubiquitous cultural truth. Singing prevails in every welcome, every send-off. Singing has a role in every culture and in most births. Try to calm a baby without singing. Try to raise a child without singing. Try to survive slavery without singing. There has been some singing from this place in this residency, which I applaud. You will be more effective when you pause from your labors if sometimes you allow yourself to sing. People sing. Birds sing. You can't get very deep into colored culture without running abruptly into song or music, some modality of harmony or dissonance which enables us to persist. We too are like birds, aloft in this broader culture, with sometimes inadequate information, with living on the margins. We run hard into unmarked windows, seeing in them the reflection of a natural habitat. We sustain injuries against structures much like our homes, believing we're flying toward a tree. Birds are brave. Some of them are small and some of them are not. Some of them are prey and some of them are hunters. In all their forms or sizes, they keen for sound, they launch, they dive, they fly, they glide, they hover, they land. In flocks, in formation, and alone, they take on the sky and wind in the broadest of contexts as they make their way through their duties and lifespan and flight paths. Birds move in relation to the wind. The wind is their main help and hindrance. We too have a context that helps and hinders us. Be aloft, alight, and write therefrom. Write what you see from high heights, not just from your place on the ground. Get up there and see what you can see. Choose what you will use from all 360 degrees of your bird's eye view. Whistle while you watch. That might help you focus. The vibration of that sound might help you remember that you are alive and you are aloft, that you are witnessing what humanity looks like above its chimneys and its roofs. Limited perception is dangerous. Myopic vision makes for thin narrative, for paltry fiction, for flat poems, for failed movies, for canceled plays, for general nosedives into the hard ground, or the rigid refusal of concrete, or the vast erasing ocean of lost dreams. We writers have to remember that the whole world is round. There are 360 whole degrees to be accessed, to be observed, to be considered. For any room, for any verse, for any house, for any neighborhood, for whatever we might be envisioning or talking about or writing about. We all of you all already have mastery of what we encounter on the ground. Prayerfully, not one of our children goes hungry. Presumably, none of our babies cries for long. We know how to handle our pets. Even horses in this country are kept limber and warm. We have places to work and to write. Our refrigerators are full enough as our bellies are. We can afford to look piercingly and perspicaciously at our world, at eye level and shoulder level and knee and ground level, belly level. We spend our lives nearby our opposites. The hungry, the poor, the uneducated, the wishful, the distressed, the oppressed, the imprisoned, the unfree. If we are unaware of our opposites, then we are landing on our days too lightly. We are processing through our days with excess preoccupation with ourselves. We are refusing to step outside the vessels that contain us within our skin, and this will not work for our chosen work as writers. We writers have no choice but to try to see all we need to observe or perceive from an elevated place, from the glory of high sight. What if we could convince ourselves to have not just eyesight, but high sight? Nina Simone, who I really love and who I grew up on, she sings this really important song called I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. I think the first time I remember singing it, I was 9, and people asked me to sing it over and over, and I wish you would go find it. But there's a verse in it that says, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. And I'd say, 'cause I know how it feels to be free. As writers, you're pretty close to freedom. You're as close as people get to freedom. Birds often seem like free beings to us. They collect all manner of material for their nests, for the places they hang out between migrations. They hunt for nourishment and gather for the future when there will be need for safety and heat. The tools of writing, the tools we equip ourselves with, are akin to nests that the birds build and construct. You collect the things you need, you collect the things that will help you write. You too make a place, an enclave, a site where you can be safe and warm enough to birth your projects. This is what you've been doing here for the 30 months you've spent with us. You've been introduced to a whole array of tools and strategies. You've tried them, you've handled them, you've defined them, you've redefined them, you've made sure you understand how to precisely use them, you've sharpened the tools you use most often. Having the tools you need makes you in some sense free. You've learned which tools you have to use in order to provide sufficient scaffolding for your kind of writing, for what you choose to say. And just as there are twigs and mud that hold the constructed nest together, each one of you will always use some hold-together tools. This you have in common for now. Other accoutrements will come to you later. Individually, you will seek and find these, grab and use these according to your preference and according to your need. Choosing what tools you will use demands accuracy. Our most ubiquitous tool being language. Be precise as you use language as you go from here. Say what you mean. Think through what you mean. Try not to trade in language that falls or rains onto your page. Think for a moment about the time in which we live, the time in which you commence, the time through which we write, the tenor of this time. This is an especially important time to reconsider some particular language that just rains, that causes us to write these words and then run off, feeling justified by a desire to stay dry. Reconsider these: the dark vision, the dark poem, the dark subject, the dark place, the black man, the black list, to blackball, black humor, blackmail, black sheep, the white lie. This might be time to stop denigrating black and to see whether some of the heartache embedded in these dark words will flee or dissipate with disuse. Some of us are irritated or made vulnerable by words in our own language that run over us every day like rats. Can you follow me? So, what about your wings? What about your wings? The journey you begin today is different than your journey has been prior to now. You will fly, and you will come free of your formation. You will be a bird alone. You can chatter, you can sing, you can and will communicate with each other, but your flight path is now wholly your own. Your vision as you fly over is yours to adhere to honestly acknowledge. I bid you good vibrations. I bid you sing. I bid you bravery and seamless navigation. I bid you steady flight. I confer on you responsibility to study and understand the wind, which is your context, which helps you fly. I confer on you responsibility to choose each word you use. Now the flock you have been is dispersing, which is a sign that together you've migrated. You've arrived on your own power to a destination you set your sights on many miles ago. As you go off alone, which is required of the work you've chosen, please remember that you do not live or write or work in a vacuum. This wind we all share, sometimes blistering, sometimes blustery, sometimes soft, sometimes loving, sometimes not. This wind entwines with the work of your wings. Wind is what holds you aloft.
Bird alone, are you on your way somewhere? Gliding, soaring on the wind, you're a sight of glory, flying way up there so high. Wonder what's your story?
You are a sight of glory. Now go and write your story.
Thank you, AJ. Sage Kalmus came to Lesley after 20 years came to Lesley 20 years after completing his bachelor's in film and broadcasting just across Charles River at Boston University. Since then, he's produced 3 original plays in San Francisco, including a one-man show in which he starred, and self-published a speculative fiction novel. He's worked as a holistic health counselor, a harm reduction advocate, and a freelance editor, ghostwriter, and web writer. He's also lived off the grid in both the deep woods of Maine and the jungles of Hawaii, though he and his husband of 8 years now live with their 4-legged family in much more civilized Berkshire County, Massachusetts. His work has appeared in Whisperings magazine, Carnival magazine, the Hampshire Gazette, and the Rose Red Review. Here are just a few things from his fellow graduates of what they have to say about Sage, and I had to be very selective. There were so many. Here's one. I met Sage the same day I met his work, which fascinated me with its film-like imagery and attention to every detail. I am so proud to have spent 2 years learning with this wonderful friend and awesome writer. Sage is a force of nature, full of power, energy, and light. He set the bar high for the rest of us in terms of preparedness. He read every article and was ready with comments and questions, always curious, analytical, and thoughtful. Sage is one of those generous writers who shares his time and passion for and with others. Sage participates, he engages, he observes. He crosses every genre with a youthful fascination and digs into every class the same way he digs into every person he meets, with a welcoming and interested spirit. And one more, he's a bright soul, and the world's a little more exciting, colors a little more colorful when he's around. Sage Kalmus.
Thank you, guys. That was beautiful. And thank you, AJ. That was lovely and inspiring. Truly. So when I thought about what I would say here this afternoon, I flashed back to another afternoon just about 2 years ago when most of us on the stage were being greeted by Steven to the program, and he said something that stuck with me. Namely, and you'll forgive me, Steven, for paraphrasing here, that there's no such thing as a writer's voice. Personally, I was devastated to hear this, since that was, after all, one of the explicit goals I brought with me to my return to school after a 20-year hiatus, to find my voice. And now here was the program director telling me on day one that was essentially a fool's errand. Of course, I knew what he meant. We all did. Even as he went on to explain that what we think of as our voice will and should change over time and from piece to piece. But I think we also knew what I meant too by that yearning. Each of us can name writers we admire whose body of work may be as eclectic as the selection at the supermarket, but which all still resonate with that same discernible core essence of the writer. A Morrison, a Chekhov, an Ondaatje, a Neruda. I imagine it's like it must feel for parents of multiple children, each child unique, and yet each one a clear and inextricable extension of them. That's what I wanted with my writing. So flash forward 2 years to now, and despite Steven's orientation bubble bursting, I did wind up finding what I came here looking for, or at least the path there. He doesn't want to call it voice. I accept that. Let's call it instead being the writer you are. We're all many things here. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. Black, white, gay, straight, young, less young. We're nannies and teachers, bartenders and deskies, designers and contractors, photographers and models. But we're also writers. As for masters, well, that word may feel a bit alien on our tongues for a while still, but let's not make the mistake of letting writer feel so dubious. And if there was ever a question, we can put it to rest here and now. We are each of us also a writer. Of course, within that deceptive 6 letters and 2 syllables is a universe of possible meanings. On this stage are political and spiritual and psychological writers, entertainers and educators, and every variation and combination thereof. There are those who write about themselves, those who write about the world, and those who write about supernatural misfits living in a hidden world existing alongside our own. There are storytellers and poets, realists and romantics, alchemists and provocateurs, and there's Krauska. We've all spent hours now in workshops soaking in and maybe sometimes sulking in the often conflicting feedback of our peers as they debate the merits of our work. Too much dialogue, too much description, too flowery, too on the nose. Always and again, and we've spent months navigating mentor feedback, some of which may have contradicted earlier mentor feedback on the same element of the same piece. Always and again, bringing it back to us alone to discern what resonates as true for us individually and the work that's trying to be born. Perhaps more than anything else, it's that power of discernment that we've developed here and that direct line to our inner resonance. Now it's up to us to continue to exercise that power, to keep our instruments sharp and attuned, to have the faith in that inner resonance, to remain always in integrity with it, to have the conviction of our own answers to the questions that arise for us, to trust in what we've accomplished here and trust in ourselves as masters in the fine art of creative writing, even while that process of mastery may take a lifetime and still not come close to being achieved to our satisfaction. This is our challenge, but it's also our gift. The writer I am is big on myth and folklore. And while researching my thesis, I found an old story with roots in at least 3 different cultures. It's about 6 blind men who've never come across an elephant before. So this king brings them an elephant and asks them to describe it to him. One blind man touches the leg and says elephants are like pillars. One touches the trunk and says elephants are like tree branches. One touches the tail and says elephants are like ropes. One touches an ear and says elephants are like fans. One touches the belly and says elephants are like boulders. One touches a tusk and says elephants are like swords. The king says, "You are all correct." We each see a different part of the elephant. And without each one of our unique individual perspectives, the world's picture of itself is incomplete. That's why it's so important for each of us to be the writer we are, not the writer our parents or children want us to be, not the one our spouses or lovers, friends and colleagues, teachers, agents, editors, publishers, producers, critics, readers, audiences, or society wants us to be, but the writer each of us is individually, because we're the only ones of their kind that have ever existed or will ever exist again. Of course, that's easy to say. Each of us on this stage knows all about residency withdrawal. And some people out there, too. When, after 9 days immersed with others who also obsess on the problems of imaginary people or on how to describe a thing in a way it's never been described before, we return to real life. But it's not here at residency when our writerly mettle is most tested. We get this now after 4 spins on this merry-go-round. It's the rest of the time, when we sink back into our comfortable or at least familiar rhythms and patterns, when life happens and everything not writing seems to take over. Well, not to deliver the reality check before dessert's even been served, but if we thought we had residency withdrawal now, this is going to be more like residency rehab. At least then we had the next milestone to look forward to. Now it's an open road. No more mentors and deadlines to keep us accountable. No more cohort to share in our pain. No doubt that's why throughout this program, time and again, we've been exhorted to cultivate a community of writers, starting here with each other, to keep that network of support alive long after class has let out. And many of us have, and have every intention of continuing to do so. But we've also been on this ride long enough to know how difficult it really is to make good on those intentions when the infrastructure is gone and all we're left with is life. That's not to say we aren't there for each other or that we won't always be. And there's always the posse. For those who don't know, that's the private Lesley MFA Facebook group for students only and lingering alumni, which is us now, you realize. But what about when the posse's all out to lunch or the internet's out? I know, God forbid, though that could prove to be more of a blessing than anything. What if your community is in crisis too? The same crisis you're in. How far is an I feel ya gonna get you down that page? Because we all know that when it comes down to it, there's just us, the chair, and that blank page. So how do we cultivate that all-important community of one? The day after learning that I would be speaking to you and on behalf of you today, one of our posse peeps in another cohort posted something that speaks to just this quandary, and she was brave and gracious enough to let me share it with you here. She wrote, I sit to write down my truth and imagination, and at times nothing comes to the page but a reflection of my insecurities, or craft devoid of gut, or gut devoid of craft. I try to reach those words that lift up, speak art, and I think, what the hell am I doing with my life? Do I have anything new? There have been days this semester when I have gone far inside my head only to come up blank. I need whole days and I don't have them. I feel rushed and exhausted. My mind is uncreative and unproductive. I try to focus and nothing comes out. All the poetry is gone. All the poetry is crammed down my throat and I can't breathe. I can't reach the subconscious. We all know what she's talking about. We've been there plenty. Some of us may even be there right now with our work of the moment. And none of us have any illusions that we won't be there again. So how do we write in the face of all this? In the face of all the rejection we've been endlessly warned to steel ourselves for en masse, when it feels like all there is to say has been said, when there's so much more important things going on in the world, when the world itself is falling to pieces on every channel live. As writers, we know the way out for us is always the way through. And as it so often happens, by the end of her post, our posse peep answered her own question and ours when she came to this conclusion. I am not sure where I belong on this journey, but I know where I find myself, and I will not lie. In other words, I'll be the writer I am. It occurred to me as I read this that when all the obstacles are up in my face and I'm having the worst trouble being any kind of writer, let alone the writer I am, when I find myself stuck in a spiral obsessing over how to do this, if I can just get back in touch with why I'm doing it in the first place, that alone may be enough to put me back on course. Because it's different for everyone. I can prove it. There's a book. Why We Write. Editor Meredith Marin interviewing 20 authors on this singular question, and their answers are as diverse as their writing. Joan Didion writes, to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see, and what it means. Armistead Maupin writes, to explain myself to myself, adding sometimes to explain myself to others. Then there's Terry Tempest Williams, who writes, to make peace with the things I cannot control, while Meg Wolitzer writes, to keep the anxiety of the world away. Maybe you write because, like Terry McMillan says, writing is about the only way besides praying that allows me to be compassionate towards folks who, in real life, I'm probably not all that sympathetic towards. Or because, like Catherine Harrison says, it's the only thing I know that offers me the hope of proving myself worthy of love. Maybe like James Fry, you're really not qualified to do anything else. Or like Jodi Picoult, you can't not write. I write for all these reasons a little bit, but mostly because nothing else besides loving fulfills me as much. Because when I'm doing it, I feel like I'm being my purpose in the world. Whatever your reasons for writing, let them be the light that guides you through your darkest nights. Having said all that, while there are as many different kinds of writers and reasons for writing as there are writers, there's also one quality all of us on this stage share, besides the obvious, which is that we're writers of the 21st century now. Yes, even you, Juliana Studer, our historical fictionite. That means it's imperative we not just embrace new developments in publishing and producing, but invent them and spearhead them as well. Digitalization has leveled the playing field in an unprecedented manner. Old models are breaking down around us, and new ones are cropping up all over to take their place. Kindles and iPads, ebooks and audiobook downloads, Netflix and Amazon originals, these are only the tip of this iceberg, and we are in position to steer this current. Don't believe me? Just ask Hope Johnson and Bonita Lee Penn, creative director and managing editor of the newly launched Sling magazine, an online literary journal. That's it. The rules of this game are changing as we speak, and now we get to help write them. But as for those old models, well, they're not falling as fast as the Chicken Littles are forecasting either. Just ask Deborah Sozin, whose first semester interdisciplinary studies project, Charlotte and the Quiet Place, is now a published children's book available for pre-order. The truth is, opportunities abound for us in every direction. We just have to create them. And so, on behalf of you, I say to Steven, to Jana and Janet, to our amazing mentors, to all of you out there tonight, and to all those who couldn't be with us, thank you from the bottom of our souls for supporting us on this journey. And to you, my fabulous cohort, I say, be the writer you are, always growing, always changing, but do it boldly, without fear or shame. I promise I will do the same. And as sure as we're now MFAs, the world will be better for it. Thank you.
So I ask that family and friends wait until AJ and I recess up that way, followed by our new alumni, and you can make the choice of either going that way or both. And then the faculty. But before I do, I'd like to say to our new alumni, as I always do, good work to you, because that work has just begun.
Because some